Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is.
For Wells.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the OBT Podcast. It helps us stay connected with you guys, and everyone can get updates from us, regarding uploads and things happening around the league, such as news and stuff that we can't cover on a spontaneous last minute notice in a pre-recorded video like this.
So we have the All-Star weekend coming up. Obviously, we all know that it's always a great time, entertaining, with a ton of events. Of course, you have the three-point contest, the dunk contest, of course, the All-Star game. We're going to get into a lot of the different events and, our thoughts on a lot of these events in terms of who's going to win. So I guess we'll start off with the Ruffles All-Star Celebrity Game. So of
Oh
course,
boy.
yeah. So if you didn't already know, this game is held every year. Usually a lot of what they do in this game, or at least the point of the game, obviously, is for charity. So I believe they're gonna raise up to $100,000 to benefit Five for the Fight Cancer Research Internship in partnership with Howard University. So generally, you have a bunch of different celebrities, musicians, athletes, those kind of people, and they tend to play together. So we have two teams, Team Ryan and Team Dwayne. So for Team Ryan, the honorary captain is Ryan Smith, the governor for the Utah Jazz. And then for Team Dwayne, of course, Dwayne Wade, former NBA player, NBA champion, and also a minority owner for the Jazz.
Yeah.
So for Team Ryan, you got a few standouts. Diamond DeShields, WNBA All Star for the Phoenix Mercury. Calvin Johnson, former NFL player. Corday, rapper, recording artist. Albert Pujols, MLB player. And also Guillermo Rodriguez from Jimmy Kimmel. He's the correspondent. And then for Team Dwayne, you got some standouts like Jesser, popular YouTuber for Too Hype. Simu Liu, actor primarily. I know him from the Giannis Google Pixel commercials where
Yeah.
they're editing and cropping the glizzy out.
Yeah.
Glizzy gone.
The Lizzie.
Um, Hassan Minaj, comedian. DK Metcalf, NFL player. Janelle Monáe, actor singer. Rika Agubawale, WNBA All Star. 21 Savage, 21 Grammys. That guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in this game. I don't know much about his basketball abilities,
He's
but he's
trash.
there.
Absolute
So,
trash.
and then Francis Tiafoe, the tennis player. Obviously, a guy that's had kind of come to fame in the last couple of years. And then Alex Toussaint, Peloton coach, Puma athlete. Sorry, buddy, I don't know much about
Me
you.
neither.
No offense, though.
Yeah.
Actually, well, yeah, no offense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think with this team, I would say Team Dwayne is probably your better bet to win, just because it feels like a better combination of athletes. In different sports, obviously you have Metcalf, NFL player. Obviously he's going to be a problem in terms of his size and ability. Uh, Now, I don't know much about his basketball ability, but obviously a big guy that can move well. That's usually a problem.
Yeah.
Jesser, he plays basketball, one of the top YouTube basketball players, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So he's obviously going to tear it up on the court. Of course, you got Arike Ngubawala. She's one of the best WNBA players, a guard. And then, of course, you got Tiafo, the tennis guy. Footwork in basketball and tennis tends to be really similar.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to make a lot of sense. And my pick is probably for 21 Savage to win the
Oh wow.
celebrity. What is it? Celebrity All-Star
MVP,
Game
something like
MVP, I
that.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think he's going to be the next Kevin Hart.
Oh wow. That's a bold prediction.
Hmm.
I don't agree with that at all. 21 Savage is probably the worst player on the roster. He has no jump shot, no handles, no defense, and with the amount of blunts that he smokes, I doubt he'll be able to do 3 laps up and down the court without asking for a sub. So,
He's got
doubt
that
it.
dog in him, though.
You
He's
think
got
he's
that
got
dog.
that dog? I don't think
Yeah,
so. More like a
maybe
Chihuahua.
Arf.
Yeah, sure. I understand the point of this game. It's all for charity. It's all for entertainment. But whoever picked these teams clearly is a Dwayne Wade stan. Because this is ridiculous. You've got some really
Dwayne
good
Wade.
Yeah, if he picked it, then good for him. But if the Jazz owner had some sort of hand in this, then he needs to be committed to some sort of mental institution because this roster is ridiculously poor. Like I'm looking at it, Corday, he's trash. He he's 5'10". He's from my area, no hate, but for a guy who's 5'10", he has no basketball skills whatsoever. There's some standouts on the roster: Calvin Johnson, Albert Pujols, um, and I think with them, they're athletes, and the WNBA player, of course, Diamond Shields. They're athletes, and they've been conditioned to play at peak performance in their sports their entire lives. So I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue, and I think they're going to probably be able to do something on the court. But as for the entertainers and rappers, I just don't see them doing much based on the lifestyle they live. Like I said, with 21 Savage, he can probably only do 3 laps up and down the court. Same with a lot of the other rappers like Ozuna, all those guys. But yeah, I'm taking Team Dwayne on this one all the way because DK Metcalf is on there. You got Francis TFO, and he's really close with Beal, and I saw him putting up shots in the summer, and he looked really good. Like he makes a lot more shots than one would think. Jesser, he's a top 10 YouTuber basketball player on the platform. So yeah, I think they're probably gonna obliterate Team Ryan just for the fun of it.
So moving on to the Rising Stars roster, or Rising Stars game. This one generally tends to be, I think, pretty entertaining, because you have a lot of the, young players around the league, rookies,
Yeah,
second year guys. Also in the last couple of years, they've added, the G League Ignite players, right? So, like, for example, we're going to get to see Scoot Henderson,
right.
right? He's generally regarded as one of the top players in the draft, uh, averaging like 19.6 assists a game. So, I mean, Mojave King, and then of course also they have some guys that are also on other G League teams, right? Like Mac McClung, who's going to be in the dunk contest. We'll get into
Yeah,
that in a little bit later. Kenny Lofton Jr., Scottie Pippen Jr. For me personally, I would probably pick probably like Team Pow or Team to win, just because I think you probably have the best collection of overall talent
yeah,
outside of Team Darren, I suppose, just because you have the mix of first and second year players.
right.
But I think Team Jason, again, just because of the G League, I think that's going to be interesting to watch. Obviously, we've seen in the last few years, we have players, come out of high school and go into the G League instead of going to college. And I
Yeah,
think that overall, that's definitely been a pretty good move for a lot of those top guys. Because, in my opinion, I think that the G League has drastically improved the level of talent that they've had in the last several years. Um, Back in the day, the G League, or I guess in the past it was known as the D League, was kind of looked at as sort of a negative stain on a player. Like if you got assigned to the D League, right, that was usually, it wasn't really a good look.
right.
But now, a lot of guys will be in the G League and, they'll be able to play and get better. Um, and again, I just think it's going to be interesting to see a lot of those G League Ignite guys, be on these teams and, kind of show everyone else what they can do. Because obviously, like, we've seen a lot of Victor Wembanyama, of course, because the NBA, shows a lot of the games that he's in, but we haven't really seen a ton of the G League Ignite guys, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they match up against a lot of these young players.
Yeah. I'm taking Team Pal on this one. The team that I'm most intrigued with is definitely Team Jason because, like you were saying, with the G League guys, Scoot Henderson, um, I think that's the team to watch. But Team Power, Team Darren is definitely taking the crown. Um, and back to Scoot Henderson, like I think this is going to be a great opportunity for him to showcase his skill level in terms of how he can compare to guys around his age. I know the game is for fun, so we're probably gonna not see too many defensive plays, but it's probably gonna be an offensive onslaught, which I have no problem with. But a lot of these guys, I think, are gonna put the world on notice and let them know that the G League isn't just some league for bums. It's a league for hidden talent and guys who maybe just haven't had the best career path, or maybe they made some mistakes, or maybe they just haven't had the light shown on them as often as the other superstars in the NBA, because there's a lot of guys that can really ball out in the G League. So, and a lot of them are on this roster. So I'm really hyped to see Team Jason, but I got to take Team Pal because I really like Banchero, Matherin, Jaden Ivey. I just think they're the most well put together roster of the four. Um, and I just think they have playmakers at almost every position, even Scotty Barnes, even though he's having a down season. Uh, I still like his game a lot. But yeah, that's all I have to say for those rosters.
Yeah. So moving on into the Saturday events, so, you have the skills challenge, 3-point contest, dunk contest. So starting with the skills challenge, we got Team Antetokounmpo again. So Giannis, Thanasis, Alex versus Team Jazz, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, Walker Kessler, and then also Team Rookies, Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith Jr., Jaden Ivey. Obviously the skills challenge is kind of morphed, each year. Sometimes they kind of change the rules a little bit.
Right.
Um, but overall, it's still, three setups. Of course, you have relay, passing, shooting. I would say for me, I think that Team Rookies, I think, is probably the best team. I think,
Yeah.
with Team Antetokounmpo, you have the best player in Giannis, but I think with Team Rookies, you have a better balance of size, shooting, ball handling, playmaking, because all three of those guys, Paolo, Jabari Smith, and Jaden Ivey, they're pretty solid in terms of, being able to handle the ball, make
Yeah.
plays, move the ball. Especially, Paolo for a guy his size, I think he's really good at that. Um, whereas say like a Walker Kessler, obviously is a pretty good defensive guy, rebounder, interior guy, but as a playmaker, I'm not necessarily sure, you know, how talented he's going to be. But again, he's going to have a chance to show off his skills. Colin Sexton obviously is a really solid, athletic, quick young guard. And then of course the Antetokounmpo brothers have their chemistry, but yeah, I'm picking team rookies for this one.
Yeah, I like Team Rookies a lot. As for the Antetokounmpos, I just don't think. I think shooting is gonna hurt them. I think that's the category that's probably gonna cost them the game or the challenge, whatever you want to call it. And they might win. They could win due to their physicality and length. Pause, but you know, with the Jazz, I don't think they have enough pizzazz. No pun intended. But I don't know. Like Jordan Clarkson is a really good ball handler. Colin Sexton, pretty skilled guard too. But Walker Kessler, I just think he holds them back a little bit. I really like Rooks a lot because Banchero is great, Ivy's great, and Jabari Smith is really good at shooting. And you know, I just think that they're probably the best well-rounded team. Um, and I like the evolution of this event. I remember it used to be solos. I think teams makes it more uh, enjoyable and more fun to watch because you get to see the chemistry or whatever. I just don't believe in the Antetokounmpos to win this event based on the shooting, and Rooks is just such a better, well-rounded team.
I agree. So moving on into the 3-point contest, you got Jason Tatum, Kevin Herter, Tyler Hero, Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, Damian Lillard. Anthony Simons was going to be in it, but he's out because of an ankle injury he sustained a couple games ago. So
Right.
he's going to be replaced by Julius Randle. And then rounding it off, Laurie Markkinen. So I would say of these guys, I think for me, the three guys that I would probably look at as the favorites to win is Kevin Herter, Buddy Hield, Damian Lillard. Um, Lillard obviously is kind of a pretty popular pick because of his range, and obviously he's of these guys, he's probably the best shooter off the dribble.
Right.
Um, Buddy Hield obviously I believe is the league leader in 3-pointers made this season, having a
Yeah.
really good season, and then Kevin Herter also having a strong season in Sacramento. For me, I think Kevin Herter might kind of be like a sleeper favorite to win. Well, not favorite, but like a sleeper pick to win,
Right.
just because I think you don't necessarily need to dribble in the 3-point contest. It's basically, you pick the ball off the rack and just shoot. And I think a skill like shooting off the dribble, you don't really need that in the 3-point contest. And I think
Yeah.
Kevin Herter as a catch and shoot guy, he's got a really quick release, he's got size. So I think he might be the guy where I wouldn't be shocked if he, just kind of goes nuclear and just ends up winning the 3-point contest. But I think Buddy Hield or Lillard have a really good shot as well.
Yeah. He's hit some big shots this season. Props to him. Major improvement from when he was in Atlanta. Um, I got to pick Dame. I think it's Dame time all the way on this competition. You know, he has unlimited range pretty much. And depending on where he puts that 4-point ball rack, I think that's probably going to make or break the winner of this competition. Uh, Honestly, from looking at this roster, this looks like the worst 3-point contest in a long time. I like Healed, I like Dame, I like Herter, I like Tatum too, but I just don't know how consistent he's gonna be. I think he's gonna hit a lot, but I don't know how many in a row he's gonna hit, and that probably will hurt him. Uh, don't sleep on Tyler Hero, Boy Wonder. I think he's got a shot too. Halliburton, I'm not too confident on based on his freak of a jump shot, but he hits them, so I can't hate. But it's an ugly shot, so just for that, he's not getting in there.
Greek
Julie, hmm,
Greek freak jump shot.
yeah, pretty much. Julius Randle, no shot. Laurie Markkinen, no shot. And the reason why, like, I know they have good percentages or whatever, but I just have no belief in them. I'm taking Dame. He's undisputed. I don't care if I have to eat those words. I'm standing on it.
Well, hopefully it's a good meal.
Yeah,
So with Julius Randle, it's kind of an interesting pick because outside of Madison Square Garden, he's shooting around 40%. I believe he's in the top 10 in total threes made. But again,
right.
I just think that's a really strange replacement pick. I feel like there could have been somebody else,
Yeah,
that could have been in there. I don't know who specifically off the top of my head, but I feel like there could have been a better option,
right,
out there. But again, kind of moving on into the slam dunk contest, it does feel like a lot of stars just don't necessarily want to be in some of these contests. Obviously, Jason Tatum and Damian Lillard, obviously they're really good. And of course Giannis is really good as well. I would say, most people would say he's the best player in the league. So
right.
obviously you got three, high caliber guys in there. But then for the slam dunk contest, Jericho Sims, right center for the New York Knicks, Mac McClung, obviously, guard, uh, two-way contract for Philly. Obviously, he became viral, for a lot of his dunks that he had in high school, college.
Yeah,
Trey Murphy the third, New Orleans, KJ Martin for the Rockets. This one is kind of tough. I mean, I've seen a lot of these guys play, but at the same time, like I don't necessarily feel like there's a super obvious favorite. With McClung, I know he was talking to Shams Karanya of the Athletic, and he mentioned that he's got at least a couple of dunks planned that he knows that nobody's ever seen before.
right.
So for me, I'm gonna hold him to his word, and I'm gonna pick him to win. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting a lower score and doesn't even make it past the first round. Just because again, I think there's a lot of unpredictability with this dunk contest.
Yeah. With this dunk contest, McClung is the only guard in here. And I think that's probably what's gonna make or break him because he's got a lot of bounce and he's creative. If you don't know who he is, he's a basketball player, but he's also an internet sensation. Like he was going viral in high school, college, all for crazy athletic plays for an undersized guard. And I think if he pulls off some sort of crazy 360, they're gonna give him a 10 based on his height. Because with that little of a height advantage, like or well, it's basically a height disadvantage. But with the amount of bounce that he has, you can't not give him the reward. But he's not my favorite. I'm going with Kenyon Martin Jr. Slept on. He's got a lot of bounce, power dunker more so than flashy, but um, we'll see. I think he's probably going to give us some high rising tomahawks, maybe a couple windmills. I don't think 360s are in his bag. I think that's going to probably be McClung. McClung's probably going to be, doing reverses or something like that, 360s. But I think that's what the final round is going to come down to is Kenyon Martin Jr., Mac McClung. Um, but I like McClung, and like you said, he said he's going to come out here with some dunks we've never seen, so that could really put him over the edge. But it could also kill him because if he does these dunks and then misses, I mean, then what? Like that's going to go down as a stain on his career. But we'll
W
see, man.
troll.
Yeah, W troll. Like he could be trolling us, so I got to go with Kenyon Martin Jr. on this one.
Yeah, troll bowl.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of want to get into also the judges for the slam dunk contest.
Right.
It's a pretty interesting list, interesting collection of basketball dunkers, I suppose. So you have Jamal Crawford. Personally, I haven't really seen him necessarily throw down a lot of crazy dunks. I feel
Right.
like he's more so known for his, really impressive ball handling ability and ability to shoot off the dribble.
Yeah.
And of course, his shake and bake. layups that he did when he used to play. Lisa Leslie, I believe she was the first woman to dunk in a WNBA game,
Makes
so it
sense.
kind of makes sense to have her
Yeah.
as a slam dunk judge. Karl Malone, obviously, with him, he used to play for the Jazz, and of course, it's in Salt Lake City, Utah, SLUT.
Right.
Um, and then you have Harold Miner. I believe he won a dunk contest.
He
I'm
won
not
two.
as yeah, exactly. I'm not as familiar with him,
Right.
but I know he won, previous dunk contests. And then of
Right.
course Dominique Wilkins, I would say
Yeah.
is, the best dunker of all of them.
Yeah. For
So,
sure.
it's definitely a bizarre list. Mainly, like I said, my bizarre pick is just Jamal Crawford because I feel like of those, he doesn't strike me as I don't necessarily think of dunking when I think of Jamal Crawford. I mean, again, you could say maybe you don't think of dunking with Lisa Leslie, but again, she was the first woman to dunk in a WNBA game, so
Right.
at least from that perspective, that makes sense. But Jamal Crawford's the bizarre pick for me.
I think I know why he's in there. I think he's going to give somebody an assist. I think he's going to go between the legs with a pass or something, some sort of like Lob City throwback kind of thing. We could probably see that happen. I don't know if they're even allowed to do that, so I might just be talking out of the side of my mouth. But um, he might throw a pass off the backboard, something to get him some extra the contestant an extra point or two.
And I guess there is kind of funny because in previous years, I guess with this collection of judges, at least they're all basketball players, right? Because you had judges in the past, right, where like in past contests, you had like, Common as a judge,
Right.
or DJ Khaled as a judge.
Right.
So it makes a lot more sense. At the very least, they're all basketball players, but I don't know. It still feels kind of bizarre to me
Yeah.
personally. I mean, again, like I said, Jamal Crawford, I think that's a bizarre pick. Lisa Leslie, she dunked obviously in a game. Karl Malone, he's obviously a fun character, I suppose, because he used to play for Utah. But
Yeah.
I don't, I guess if you're gonna have him as a judge, you might as well have like Josh Primo or Miles Bridges or
Yeah.
or even like Bryn Forbes, I guess. According to a few days ago, shout out to those guys, except not really, not at
Yeah.
all.
They,
But
they should have kept the theme consistent. They tried to reach a bunch of demographics, but if they're going for offensive players, they should have just chose the roster you just said.
well, I mean, Karl Malone was a great offensive player,
Yeah.
so
Offensive too, if you want to, however you want to pronounce it. It's your choice.
yeah. So yeah, like I said, it feels like with a lot of these events, it feels a little bit disappointing, like I said, that a lot of these star players aren't going to be in it. And then, moving on into the All Star game, of course, we know that there's a lot of players that are unfortunately going to be out because of injury, right? Say Zion Williamson, he's going to be out due to injury. Steph's going to be out due to injury. Kevin Durant, I believe recently, Joel Embiid said he may not play. We'll see. Jalen Brown, we don't know if he's going to play. Obviously, he had that facial injury. And I believe Giannis, he got hurt tonight, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, yeah, but we'll see how he continues to feel, but it definitely is kind of a disappointment, in my mind.
Right.
Just the amount of talent that's going to be out.
Yeah.
Um,
In the past episodes, my hype was really elevated. With all the all stars and the talent that's going to be in this game, but it's kind of been dwindling every day since we've been hearing about more and more injury updates. Giannis potentially being out, Joel Embiid. It's unfortunate, and the the other events don't even seem to be star studded, and stacked up like how they used
yeah,
to be. So it's kind of disappointing, but I think everyone who's going to be participating is going to make the most of it. They're going to shine. They're going to give the fans what they want to see, you know. But my excitement has been dwindling little by little every injury update and every replacement that I've been hearing. Not to say the replacements are bad. I just would have liked to have seen the original guys in there. Um, but that's not going to happen because it's not reality. They're hurt. So
right. Like with Shaden Sharp, he's not necessarily hurt, but he chose to drop out of the slam dunk contest to focus on the season, and I think that would
right,
have been great player to have in the dunk contest.
yeah,
A guy like a Zion, I think, would be awesome too. But of course, he's hurt. You have John Morant, who is healthy, but I guess he chose not to be in the dunk contest. So it's kind of a shame, that we don't get to see those because we had previous dunk contests where you had big stars,
yeah.
in them. and win and
Right.
have some really impressive dunks. In terms of like, I remember Blake Griffin jumping over the car.
Right.
I think that was for me personally probably my favorite All Star dunk moment. At
Yeah.
least with the Vince Carter stuff, I was very little when that stuff happened, so I
Right.
don't personally remember it. But for Blake Griffin, that was like the first dunk contest that I really ever saw.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I would say that's my personal favorite dunk contest.
Yeah. I'll give mine in a second, but I think maybe last year, I think John Morant went on an interview with Taylor Rooks from Bleacher Report, and he kind of stated he didn't want to do it unless he gets paid for it or something like that. Something along the lines of him not getting paid to do the dunk contest. Uh, so NBA, you need to pay him so he can get in there because he jumps over people on a regular basis. And he probably has, I think, 3 dunks this season that are candidates for dunk of the year. So yeah, I don't know why he's not in it, but my favorite dunk contest moment is definitely the Aaron Gordon and Zach Levine dunk off that they had. It was mano a mano, and they made the most of it. They gave the fans everything that we wanted to see. Um, and this might be a hot take to some people because I've been seeing on Twitter the debate has resurfaced somehow. People are saying Aaron Gordon won the contest. No, Zach Levine won it in my opinion. I think he just went off and did his thing and showed off real bounce, not necessarily power dunks, but bounce. Um, so I gotta give it to Zach Levine, and that's where the award belongs. I don't think it goes to Aaron Gordon. Not to say that he did bad; he did great, especially for a guy his size. But I'm taking Zach.
Yeah, and then I guess another funny I guess dunk contest moment I remember with Ben McLemore, right, where he had his dunk with Shaq, right, and they dubbed it Shaq Lamore,
Yeah,
and he jumped over Shaq, and then John Wall, just comes in and jumps over the mascot, and then
yeah,
immediately just outshines that, and then just ends up winning. I just remember that because I always thought that was kind of funny, just because of how flashy the presentation for McLemore's dunk was, and then it ended up not winning. I just thought
yeah.
that was funny.
A lot of wasted
No offense to
fanfare on
Ben
that one.
McLemore.
Yeah,
Yeah, no offense to Ben McLemore.
none. Yeah, that was
Um,
the beginning of the end of his career. And I wanted to choose the John Wall one, but I didn't want to show my Wizards bias too much. But
but going back to the All Star game, I think for me, I think what's going to be interesting is to see how the draft works.
right,
Obviously, the last few years we've had, like what a week or so before the All Star game, you have the two captains come on TV and pick their guys.
right.
That kind of provided us with some funny moments. Like Durant choosing to not pick James Harden. Or Giannis talking about he wants somebody who's going to pass. Ironically, also
James Harden,
Stephen
yeah,
Harden.
yeah,
But this one's going to be different because it's going to be on the court prior to the game beginning. So the draft is going to be at 7:30. The game is going to be at 8:30. So it's going to be more like a pickup game style draft where guys are going to pick on the floor. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, who goes where. Obviously, we can't necessarily like cover the game like from a super analytical perspective just because we don't know who's going to be on what team.
right.
Uh, but I guess we could probably talk about who we think might win the All Star Game MVP. Um,
Oh yeah, good point.
yeah, so I guess for me, this is gonna be a really tough one. Obviously, we've talked about, who are the All Stars right now. Um, I think a really good pick in terms of like an All Star. I think personally is either like Joel Embiid or Giannis.
Okay,
Because like with Joel Embiid, and I think I lean probably more towards him just because obviously, there was the controversy of him not being an all-star starter. Of course,
right.
now he's moved to the starting lineup. Um, so I think he's gonna probably, kind of show that he should have been a starter in the first place, and it shouldn't have even been a question. Of course, if he doesn't play, right, because we don't know if he's gonna play, but if he doesn't play, it's all moot. So that's why Giannis is kind of my backup pick. But I think Embiid, I think, is the guy to probably look out for as the All-Star MVP.
Okay. Yeah. For my MVP, I would probably go with either LeBron or Giannis. And Giannis, I mean, I just don't see anybody stopping him on on any of these rosters. So I just at an efficient level, because it's the All Star game, so defense isn't played as much as in a real NBA game. So if Giannis can have his way in an NBA game, he's easily going to have his way in the All Star game. Um, but LeBron, I think, is a sleeper candidate mainly because he's probably going to try and win it for Kobe. You know, and I don't know. He's got a lot to prove still because people are still hating on him even in his old age. So for him to win the All Star Game MVP in his latter years of his career, I think that would be cool to see. But I'm not sure if he's gonna actually chase that or if that's even on his mind. But those are my two candidates.
Okay. Yeah, so hopefully it's a really entertaining All Star weekend.
Yeah.
Moving on into some more NBA news. Obviously, Zion Williamson. We kind of talked about it. He's going to be out for 6 weeks.
Wow.
Or not 6 weeks. My bad. He's going to be out for multiple weeks
Yeah.
following the All Star break. Just kind of a really tough season for him. I mean, he obviously starts off the season playing pretty well, gets hurt and misses a little bit of time.
Right.
Comes back. Averages 25 points a game. With Ingram out, the Pelicans move towards the top of the West, and then he, ends up unfortunately getting hurt again, and it just kind of sucks to see because when he plays, he's one of the best players in the game, and he's also one of the most entertaining players to watch. And
Right.
considering he's in the early part of his career, this is his fourth season. He's in his early 20s, and he's probably only played one healthy season, and
Yep.
it's I think it's kind of time to start getting really concerned about his longevity because again he's only had one healthy season in 4 years, and even though he clearly put himself into shape, or much better shape, he still looks I think a little bit too heavy, and I'd like to see him get a little bit trimmer, and just get into just better condition because I feel like he's too good to miss all this time, and it would be
Right.
a real shame if his career's kind of cut short due to injuries because when he's on, he's really fun to watch.
Yeah, he's insane. He's only played like 40% of the games that have occurred since he's been drafted. So that's a pretty bad percentage if you ask me.
Including a season where he didn't play at all.
Exactly. So it's rough and he's kind of put New Orleans in a sticky situation too because you have to look at it from their perspective. They could have easily passed on him and gotten Ja Morant. But it all comes down to health concerns. Everybody knew there were health concerns with him coming into the draft, but he's such a generational talent that you couldn't not pick him, especially if he's available. So New Orleans had to pick him. And then
Yeah,
another thing is they offered him the what 5 year 190 million extension. So they had to pay him there too because if you let him walk, that's the biggest gamble in your probably franchise history. You know what I mean? Because you already lost AD, so you can't lose another generational talent. Um, and like I said, it puts them in a sticky situation because I know they don't want to move on from him because there's so much potential, there's so much talent, he brings in so much money. But at the end of the day, you have to look at his health. If he's not playing, what is he doing for you? You know what I mean? And
and it's hard. Hmm.
and sorry, I'm going on a rant basically, but with New Orleans, they're a low market team. Like people forget about that. They're a low
Yeah,
market
the
team.
smallest markets.
Yeah, they are a small market team. So when people come to New Orleans, it's not to come to New Orleans just for the fun of it. They're coming there to play with Zion. Simple as that. You know what I mean? And if we haven't even seen the big three's potential, like we haven't seen CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and Zion on the floor too much. So I don't know. I think New Orleans needs to reevaluate and figure out a way if they can get this guy healthy. Because I'm gonna be honest, just like you, he needs to trim down a lot because watching him walk courtside really hurts my knees, and that's not even like that's not even like a joke or like I know it came off kind of funny, but it's not a joke. Like I'm seriously concerned for his health because I like him a lot. He's a great player.
I mean, he walks like sometimes he walks like a pirate, I think. And I thought I had heard reports of them trying to kind of help him with that, but
Right.
like I said, I hope he can really figure it out. Because
Yeah.
and then you also look at New Orleans. I mean, you know, starting off going into the season, they were a team that was looked at kind of like Memphis last year, where they were looked at as the next young team to rise up, and
Right.
they had a really good start to the season. And like I said, before Zion went down, uh, like a couple months ago at this point, they were at the top of the West or right there with Denver and Memphis. And then he goes down. Ingram's also out, and that's kind of another concern too, because you also have to look at Ingram. He's also missed a lot of time, and it's going to be really hard to have a team where your two best players, even though they're relatively young, are basically a lock to miss like at least 2 months of the season.
It's crazy.
So this kind of sucks because it feels like we're not going to see a whole lot of the Pelicans at full strength,
Right.
and it's unfortunate because when they're at full strength, I think they're a really fun team to watch, and they're really good when they're healthy. But
Yeah.
obviously, the biggest question is when they're healthy. When are
Right.
they going to get healthy? Because we haven't seen it enough.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. I don't know what they can do to help, but they need to get him some help ASAP.
Yeah, because that was one of my not finals picks, obviously, but I thought that they were going to be a team that I think could easily win like a couple of rounds, at least a round. But I don't think they're going to be able to at this point if they can't get healthy.
Yeah. They could easily go on a playoff run, but like you said, they're not healthy. And um, it's unfortunate that the players are like Zion and Ingram too. Ingram misses a lot of time
Yeah,
too.
yeah, that's
Like,
what I was
and
saying.
yeah, and apparently, I don't know what injury it was, but it was so minor. Like, I think it was like a bruised toe or something that he was out with for like months. And it's like, at this point, why aren't you playing? You know what I mean? I can understand Zion a little bit more because it's glaring that he has health issues, but Ingram should be out there, you know?
I guess I just don't know enough about the specific toe injury, to
Right.
necessarily comment. But it is a shame because, like I said, I like watching those guys.
Same.
Even as a Laker fan, I enjoy watching those guys play just because I think they're really good and they're really fun to watch.
Right.
But hopefully, like I said, hopefully they can get healthy.
Right.
So moving on, with some more, I guess, Russell Westbrook updates. So the Clippers contacted his camp. So I believe he's still under contract with the Jazz. He hasn't been bought out yet. So please fix that NBA 2K.
Yeah.
Um, so they had to contact his camp in order to, figure out what's going on with him, in terms of what he wants to do. He's weighing his options. Woj reported, the Heat, the Bulls, the Clippers. They also mentioned the Wizards kind of as a fourth team. That was kind of a team that we kind of thought, would be interesting to see him go back to, but it was
Right.
never really reported as a potential team. It does kind of feel like the Clippers seem like they may be in the driver's seat. I know Woj said a little while ago that the Bulls were kind of the favorites, but it just feels like with the relationship he has with Paul George, and the fact that they have, essentially openly recruited him to, try to come to the Clippers, and they basically told the GM and everybody else, like, hey, we want this guy. It seems like he's going to go there. I'm kind of concerned, or I would be if I would be concerned if I'm the Clippers, mainly just because I just don't really think it's a great fit. I understand that on a minimum contract, it's not going to hurt you as much as say it had with some of the other teams he had been on,
Hmm.
because you're signing him to a minimum contract and you're not
Right.
taking away any players to get him.
Right.
You're just adding him to a mix. But I also just feel like he's really hard to fit around guys because it's just like obviously we know the concerns with the shooting, in terms of how teams leave him open. Now you have teams that put centers on him, and I just feel like on the Clippers that's going to be tough. I understand that the Clippers as a team they have a lot of really good shooters, guys that can shoot off the dribble, pull up jumpers, and it would probably help for them to have a guard that can kind of go downhill. Obviously Norman Powell can do it, but it would be nice to have another guard that can do it especially at the point guard spot, since Norman Powell isn't really a point guard.
Right.
Bones Highland is fine. I think he's a solid scorer, point guard off the bench. But again, I could see some of why they would talk themselves into it, but I just don't really like it, and I just don't think it's going to work. And again, I know that he has a good relationship with Paul George, but he also had a good relationship with LeBron. That didn't work out. He had a really good relationship with Bradley Beal, right? It seemed like that didn't necessarily work out.
Right.
And he had a really good relationship with Harden. They were childhood friends, and that didn't work out.
Yeah.
So it just, I don't know. It just, I understand. Like I said, I understand that guys want to play together, especially if they're friends. But sometimes just because you're friends, that doesn't mean it's going to work on the court. So
Yeah.
I,
Look at
if
Brooklyn.
I'm the Clippers, I don't like it. Yeah, exactly. Brooklyn, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Where they're all together, and then after basically 1 year together, they're all gone.
Right.
So, I I personally don't like this for the Clippers. I think they should probably lean somewhere else. Just again, I don't think it's a good idea.
Um, for me, I like this if I'm the Clippers, honestly, because they got rid of both their point guards. So they got rid of John Wall, they got rid of Reggie Jackson, and um, they're in need clearly because Terrence Mann isn't a true point guard. He's a great defensive player, but he's not a true point guard. But in today's NBA, things are kind of positionless. Like Paul George could easily bring the ball up, Kawhi could too, but I think with Russ, I think he fits maybe not necessarily the locker room culture, but I think he fits in terms of what they need coming off of the bench. And I'm concerned with what their approach with him is going to be because I don't want them to get him and he gets inserted to the starting lineup. That's going to be the biggest blow to his career because his ego is probably going to try and feed into it, and he's probably going to end up doing too much, which we've seen on various teams that he's been on the past couple years. Huh?
That's dark.
Yeah, it's dark. Um, but I think with him they need to just insert him into the rotation, but not the starting lineup. Have him come off the bench where he controls his own unit, easily run down or run like 5 out sets where he can just get downhill, score the ball fairly easily on transition points, whatever it may be. Just easy buckets, things to ease him back into being the great player that he once was because he's not that anymore. And I think teams and he has to realize that his role is a lot different than it has been in the past 5 or 6 years. Um, and with the defense, I'm concerned because he's getting up in age and I just don't know if he fits well into the scheme that the Clippers run because they like to pride themselves on defense, defense, defense. That's why they have Terrence Mann at the point guard position. So I'm not, I just don't see him starting for the Clippers. And as a Wizards fan, he was on our roster previously, but, we're desperate. So, this pains me to say it because I was not a fan of him when he was here, but we are desperate and we definitely need a point guard. And I think he could really fit with our lineup fairly well because we're lacking leadership at that position, and I don't think leadership has ever been an issue with him in his career. I think it's just been ego. Um, but around the roster that the Wizards have currently, I wouldn't mind seeing him run a few sets where it's 5 out with Porzingis, Avdia, Kuzma, Beal, and then Russ at the one. I would not mind that because that's going to space out the floor, give him so many options to just get to the rack. Um, and I think it would be smooth, but like I said, we're desperate, so I would not mind him being back on our roster.
Yeah, that's kind of the question. That's one of the questions for me is what is the role that he's going to have
Right.
on these teams, and that may be a reason why a buyout hasn't necessarily happened yet because maybe his camp is trying to figure out what that role is because when he was in LA, over the offseason with the Lakers, right? I believe when he fired his agent, kind of publicly came out and was like, he was trying to tell him your best bet career-wise is to try to stay with LA and try to make it work. And you do have to give him some credit for coming off the bench. And obviously that's a huge change for him because he's generally been a starter for most of his career.
Right.
But like I said, I'm just curious to see what his role is because I do think at this point in his career, I don't think he's a high level starter at this point. I think he can probably be best suited to come off the bench in a more limited role, right? Maybe he'll have games where if he plays really well, he'll play more minutes and close. But like you said, I don't personally think he should be a starter. And if the Clippers are signing him as a starter, then like I said, I think that's going to be a huge mistake. But
Yeah.
I just personally don't think it's going to work because again, we know the issues with the shooting, we know the issues with the defense, and I'm just not buying that it's going to work at this point. Because again, I mean, this is going to be what his sixth, seventh team
Yeah.
in almost the same amount of seasons, right? Because he was in OKC, I think, in 2019, right? Was traded to Houston for 2020. That didn't work out. He was traded to the Wizards, right, in 2021. That didn't work out. Then he was traded to LA for 2022. That didn't work out. And now he's going to be traded to Utah. And then obviously he's going to get bought out and go somewhere else. I
Right.
mean, Is it going to continue to not work? I feel like that's probably more likely, but again, I do kind of wonder where he goes because I think he can still play. And like I said, I was a big Westbrook fan at different points. So I do kind of want to see him, be in a role where he can, continue to succeed. And I
Yeah,
wish it had worked out in LA, but I just didn't expect it to work. And
right.
it's a shame.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. He's kind of in that point in his career. Like I've said multiple times on the podcast, con- um, applying to different guys, but he's in that point where you start to see regression. Simple as that. And he needs to accept that, and the ego needs to go. I think that's what's really going on here is the ego, but I could be wrong.
EG, yeah, EGG, ego gotta go.
Yeah, ego got to go. It's
Uh,
too much.
yeah. So moving on to Love or Kevin Love, um, for the Miami Heat. So he's been bought out by Cleveland. Miami Heat seem like they're the only team that's interested in him, from what I understand, according to Shams Charania of the Athletic. It's kind of a bizarre fit.
Yeah,
He's 6'8", so he's relatively undersized. He used to be listed as 6'10", but I know the heights have been adjusted, to being without shoes and all that.
right,
Um, Now he's more like a center, right? Because he came in the league as a four, because it was a different era at that point, even though, again, he's 33, 34, so he's not really that old. But again, the NBA has changed over the last several years. But now he's a center, but he's undersized, not a great defender,
right,
not really that athletic. Um, you know, can still, I guess he can still grab rebounds at a pretty solid rate. Obviously, he can shoot, but he's had a pretty down year this year. He started the season off playing pretty well for Cleveland coming off the bench. And actually got a lot of praise, because he had had a couple of seasons at different points in Cleveland where it, kind of felt like he really wanted out. But he embraced coming off the bench, and adjusted his game. But at the same time, in the last couple of months, his role has really dwindled. His shooting
right.
has gone down. So I'm not necessarily all that confident in, what he can do at this point in his career. Um, but I think for the Miami Heat, they seem to have in general done a decent job of kind of, getting guys and, uh, being able to kind of rehabilitate their value. And again, in Miami, he's going to play a limited role off the bench. I mean, I guess he'll still play, but again, if I'm Miami, you don't want to rely on him. I mean, I can't imagine he's going to be a starter. Maybe he'll be better than Dwayne Dedman, as kind of like a backup big man. And again, Miami can get kind of interesting because, Bam doesn't really space the floor as a 3-point shooter, but Love can. So maybe when he comes off the bench, he can space the floor. He's a good passer, in terms of getting rebounds, throwing
Right.
outlet passes, long passes like that.
Don't remind
So
me.
yeah, so I think as a minimum contract signing, I don't necessarily think it's that bad. It's kind of like we talked about with a lot of these other buyout guys, aside from Russ, I think, where it's like their role is going to be, you know, small, or they're going to be playing limited minutes. Most of these guys are going to come off the bench. And for a minimum contract, you could probably do a lot worse.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of mixed on it because, again, I think it could help the Heat, sort of, but I don't necessarily look at it as a move where it's like, okay, Miami's season is now saved. So now they're going to be a contender again. I
right.
just think, it can help. But, it is kind of weird with Miami because they've had a really bizarre season where they've been a lot better as of late, but they definitely aren't as good as they were last year. Last year they were very close to making the NBA Finals. Um, but I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a low risk, probably low reward move because, again, if it works, I mean, I don't think it makes Miami that much better. But if it doesn't work, again, it's a minimum contract, so you can just cut him.
Yeah, I like the move honestly because it seems like Miami's like one of the only teams that's kind of collecting the infinity stones of locker room guys. Like they have Kyle Lowry, they've got Haslam, and now they're getting Love. So, you know, I think they're kind of building something special where we're seeing veteran guys who, can't get as many minutes, can't play as much, but they're able to, guide these young players into, really good studs in the NBA. Like, we're seeing Bam and Hero do really well. And, I think that's partly due to the mentorship that they have down there with Lowry and Haslam. Haslam when he plays, it's probably like the funniest thing ever because he just looks so unathletic and he hits the floor like every minute of the game that he's in. Um,
Highest paid assistant coaches in the league.
Pretty much. So it's like he's not necessarily an asset on the court, but off the court, he's valuable to them because, he's providing these guys mentorship. And if you look at Houston, which is the exact opposite, John Wall went on the podcast, not our podcast, but a podcast. I can't remember which one it was, but we covered it. We did like a little recap of his interview. And, he said when he was in Houston, Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., he said the stuff that they're doing on the court now, if they were doing that on any other team, they'd be out of the league because they just look like they're playing AAU basketball. There's no foundation, there's no plays, there's no set runs or anything. It's just whoever gets the ball does what they
It's a
want to
mess.
do. Yeah,
It's a
it's they're in shambles, and it's really sad to see. I know they're in rebuild, but that doesn't give you the excuse to play like that. That's not real basketball. But yeah, I think Miami's doing the right thing with this acquisition. I think if he gets rotational minutes, that's fine. Even if he doesn't, that's equally as good because he's going to be a valuable off the court asset to the young guys in Miami.
So, kind of to, I guess, wrap up a lot of the news going around the NBA. So, Joe Mazzulla, coach for the Boston Celtics, or interim coach for the Boston Celtics, now is no longer an interim head coach. So now he's been given an extension, and he's going to be, I guess, the full-time coach for Boston, replacing Ime Udoka. Shout out to Joe Mazzulla. I think, obviously there was a lot of pressure on him going into this season, considering what happened with the previous coach Udoka, where he got suspended, for the year, and then he has to kind of come in, and sort of take over the reins.
Right.
But I think he's done a really good job. I mean, Boston's got the best record in the league. Tatum and Brown have taken their game to another level. The team as a whole has been terrific from start. Well, season isn't over, but from the beginning of the season to now, they've consistently been the best team, I think. Um,
Yeah.
and I think some of the credit has to go to him. I still think that there's some concern come playoff time. What's he going to look like? Just because I think there's certain aspects of him during the regular season, things with timeouts, things with patterns and rotations. I think there's a little bit of a concern there. But again, he is a rookie head coach. So you do kind of have to give him, some time. But we'll see. Like I said, I think he has been good, but I do kind of want to see more.
Yeah. I've been really impressed with him, you know, especially with all the adversity he's faced and, coming into the situation that he came into, I have to acknowledge firstly that he did inherit a great team. They went to the finals last year. They came up short, but at the end of the day, they have rallied around him from the moment they got their first win. There's footage of it, everything. So the team believes in him. The organization clearly believes in him since they've given him an extension. And he's made them really the team to watch, and they honestly scare me in the East. I do not want to see Boston win because that I hate that team, but uh,
Same.
they're one to watch, and I'm genuinely afraid that they could win it all. That's how good they've looked, and he's polished them out. He's done everything right that a coach should do, especially with the talent that's available on his roster. So
Yeah.
major props to him. He's great.
Yeah. And just to kind of round it out, so in terms of like the top coaches in the league, so for me, I guess like my top five. So not necessarily in this specific order, but I think you got Popovich, you got Kerr, Spolstra,
Right.
um, Budenholzer, and Tyronn Lue. Those are my
Okay.
top five for me. Just because I think when you look at each of those guys, Popovich, obviously you have to give him credit for being able to, give the Spurs sustained success over, like a 20, 15, 20-year period.
Right.
Kerr, obviously you have to give him credit for what he was able to do in terms of turning the Warriors from, like a middling playoff team that was entertaining to, a dynasty. Um, Eric Spoelstra, obviously you have to give him credit for what he was able to do with the big three in Miami, and then what he's been able to do, in the last couple of years. I mean, obviously this year it hasn't been great, but they were really close to making the NBA Finals last year, and to make the finals, potentially make it twice in just a few seasons with that roster, which I don't think anybody would have expected to go to the NBA Finals. I think that's an
Right.
accomplishment. Budenholzer's kind of funny just because you consider that year that they won the title. Reportedly, if they had lost to the Nets, he would have been fired. And to go from that to all of a sudden they've won a title and now he's looked at as one of the top coaches. I think that's kind of funny. Um, so those are my top five coaches for me.
Yeah. For me, mine's a little different, but it's basically my last one that's different. So I have Greg Popovich, Spoelstra, Kerr, Budenholzer, and I kind of want to explain Budenholzer a little bit because he kind of polished out that well, he not kind of he did polish out the Bucks team. He really found out what made them tick. And their weaknesses, their strengths, and he just used those to the maximum ability, figuring out all kinds of rotations that are great and, bringing in bench guys like Bobby Portis at the right exact time to give you, uh, big plays that, your starters can't always get you when, they're not on the floor. So I got to give props to Budenholzer. He's really turned it around up there in Milwaukee. And they can easily go on another championship run, if everyone's healthy. So I wouldn't count them out yet, but I really like Budenholzer. And then for my fifth pick, I got to go with Missoula, namely because all of the adversity he's faced coming into, you know, filling in Udoka's shoes, with the whole uh, controversy and his situation going on, Missoula stepped in, and then immediately there was controversy with him too, facing I think it was assault charges from a long time ago that kind of resurfaced, and the media was questioning him and hounding him and trying to get after the Celtics organization, but he kind of ignored all the background noise and has made this Celtics team look even better than they were before. And he's really it looks like he's worked out all the kinks with them. Like you said, the only determining factor that we don't know yet is playoff time, because in playoffs this is when coaches are kind of made or broken, honestly, because if you look at Doc Rivers, looking at his resume, you would think, wow, that's an all-time coach, but at the end of the day, he gets out coached in the playoffs, and that's what it comes down to. That's when coaches shine the most. They shine in the playoffs and really the finals, and games leading up to that. So I'm curious to see how he does. I think he's going to do great because clearly he has a brilliant coaching mind, and a great staff underneath him, and obviously great players. Because the players can only get you but so far, because the coaches are the minds behind it. They're the ones who uh, come up with these rotations, schemes, whatever it may be. It's all the coach and his staff. So these are guys he trusts. These are guys he's built a relationship with. So that's why I kind of had to explain that answer, because I know people would probably be like, what? He hadn't proved anything. Well, in my opinion, he's proved a lot, especially considering the things that he faced coming into this position at the beginning of the season.
I just kind of asked that question about the coaches just because when you look at say a Joe Mazzulla, in order for Boston to win the title, he's going to have to probably go up against one of those top coaches.
Right.
If he goes against Milwaukee in the conference finals, right, he'll have to face he'll have to out coach Budenholzer.
Right.
Right, if he goes to the finals and let's say maybe Golden State finds a way back there, right, he's going to have to find a way to outcoach Steve Kerr,
Right.
um, or somebody like that. So it's like I said, for him, I just want to see what he can do with this team in the playoffs. Because obviously, with Udoka last year, they were 2 games away from winning the title, and now he's not the coach anymore. Reportedly, they're going to give him options to explore elsewhere. I do kind of wonder if he gets another opportunity.
Right.
Probably not this season, obviously, since I'm assuming he's still under suspension, even though he's not the head coach anymore. But maybe next season, because I do think a lot of these, well, not a lot, but I do think that a number of these coaches probably won't stick around. So it's going to be interesting to see. With
Yeah.
a lot of these coaches, though, um, I will say that I do think a lot of times when you look at a lot of different fan bases, it seems like coaches do get like a ton of criticism and not quite as much credit when the
Right.
teams win. Because, like, regardless of what fan base you're talking about, it could be one of the best teams, it could be one of the worst teams. Go look at a lot of the comments after every loss. Most of the top comments tend to be, you know, they tend to place a lot of blame on, either the coach or, maybe a player or two, but oftentimes the coach tends to come up a lot, regardless of who you ask.
Yeah. With the Wizards, it's funny. Um, Whenever we lose and it's like there's glaring issues, the top commenters are normally fire Scott Brooks, and he's not even our head coach anymore. So it's like, that stuff is still the fan bases hang on to that stuff forever. So then they'll kind of trickle down and attack the players if they played bad. But it always starts at the head coaching position. But I feel like they don't even get enough credit when they win. So it's kind of unfair in my opinion. Like it's not like the NFL where all the time a lot of the highlights in game are focused on the coach. Like, what is he going to do here? What is he going to do here? What kind of adjustment is he going to make? The commentators are constantly talking about it. So I'd like to see the NBA kind of shift towards the NFL style of commentating when it comes to coaches, because I feel like they're kind of under highlighted, and it would be nice to give them their flowers while we can. Really,
Yeah. I know for a number of the commentators that are former coaches, generally they kind of have like I guess a creed of sorts where they don't really want to like say a lot of negative stuff about the
right,
coaches. So they tend to really only highlight some of the positive aspects.
right,
But, kind of going back to what you said with the Wizards, obviously with my team, the Lakers, right? Obviously, like last year, there was obviously you had Russ towards the top of the blame comments, but then you also had like fire Frank Vogel after
right.
every single game, even after he was fired, fire Frank Vogel.
Yeah,
Um, and then, you go into this season, right, with Darvin Ham, right? Fire Darvin Ham, same thing over and over and over
right,
again, right? And it's like, I do think with the coaches, like, it's a combination of, I think you want to see what they can do once they have the talent. I do think that there are things, even if it's not a great roster, that you can critique fairly, right? Maybe you don't like how they handle rotations. Maybe you don't like how they handle adjustments.
right.
Maybe you don't like some of the basic schemes they run. But then other times, like you still need talent in order to win, right? Like the last couple of games that Darvin Ham has had with this, new look Lakers, I think he's done a pretty good job,
Right.
given, what he had with the previous version of the roster, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got to give coaches time, right? And I mean, ultimately, yeah, some of these guys may not be great head coaches, right? Maybe Wes Unseld Jr. doesn't work out. Maybe Darvin Ham doesn't work out, right?
Right.
Maybe even a guy like Jamal Mosley for Orlando doesn't work out. But
Steven
you know,
Silas.
yeah, for Houston, exactly, right? So, but again, at the end of the day, I do kind of want to see more talent on these teams just to kind of see again what they can do because
Right.
I do kind of want to give coaches credit because obviously the players play, but the coaches also coach, and adjustments from game to game or even within a game, I think are really crucial to being able to win games, right? That's
Yeah.
why it's not just having a Stephen Curry, that makes Steve Kerr like a really good coach, right?
Right.
It's not just being able to coach LeBron and Wade and Bosh that makes Eric Spoelstra a great coach, right? There's other aspects to it that I think are really important.
Yeah.
And hopefully we continue to see those over the course of the season and beyond.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches, they have to fight their own internal battles that we don't know about, whether it be butting heads with management or butting heads with ownership. It could be whatever, and we don't know.
Yeah, yeah, or maybe they have, or maybe people in the front office are like, hey, we gave this guy a lot of money, so you have to play him,
Right.
X amount of minutes a game, even though it's pretty clear that they probably shouldn't really be getting any minutes. So
Right.
there's a lot of factors that go into being a head coach,
Right.
I think. So yeah, that's it for today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate you and your support. Thanks for listening. Have a good weekend. Hopefully, the All Star weekend is really entertaining,
Yeah.
and we'll get back to you on Monday.